Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper. For those of you not familiar with the show, my guest and I will cover every angle of real estate under the sun, from interest rates to the economy to what's happening in Washington. Anything that affects our local real estate markets will be covered here. If you've got credit issues, you can call me. If you're looking to buy or sell your home and you have any questions regarding, you may not have enough equity to sell your home, you're wondering what your options are. We talk a lot about short sales and the benefits of short selling versus letting your home go to foreclosure. Reach out and call me. I'd be glad to give you a list of options that you have that, can save yourself, from probably make yourself at least be able to buy a home within the next 2 to 3 years after the short sale versus waiting anywhere from 4 to 7 years if you were to go to foreclosures. If you're looking to refinance the lowest rates, we've worked with a great company, Gold Star Financial. I'd be glad to recommend you and refer you over to them as well. Make sure that you join us every Monday at WNEW 1580 AM from 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. The off-air number to call in at any time is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Or you can leave your question via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. Remember, if it's real estate, it's covered here. Got a great show lined up for you guys today. A lot went on last week as far as the Fed meeting that took place, and we want to let you know what happened there, as well as the European Central Bank met, as well as the Bank of England. And joining me on our panel today to discuss the many issues of last week, as well as what's on deck this week that can affect you and your real estate decisions, is Louis Cammarosano, who is the general manager of HomeGain. Louis is often cited in the media as an industry expert in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN Money, Fox Business, Smart Money, MSN, and numerous others. Louis, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm okay. And yourself, Ryan?
Oh, can't complain, Louis. Last week we spoke a lot about, the Fed meeting and what was going to take place. I know you had said that you felt like nothing was going to happen, especially right before the elections. And sure enough, that's exactly what did take place. The Fed came in and basically, obviously, they still realize that the economy is not really moving. But at this point, they're going to stand pat and not do anything. Also, we had the European Central Bank. They did the meeting as they said they were going to try to come up with a plan. It looks like a bunch of lip service, as it's been for years now. It doesn't look like they're going to create a plan anytime soon, although Wall Street still believes that they will, they're not going to let the euro completely fall apart. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake out here. Obviously, with us, we have the presidential elections coming up here in November. I don't know, what the timing of all this, if they're going to, after the elections, if the Fed's going to have to hook up with the European Central Bank and whoever else to work out some sort of plan. But I think at some point there's going to have to be some action that's taken on all fronts. Would you not agree, by multiple parties?
Well, yeah, there's going to be action that's going to take place. But when they say they're going to save the euro, they're actually going to destroy the euro through the mechanism for which they save it. They're going to print up money to bail out the countries that need the money.
Agreed.
So thereby those sovereigns won't default, but in a sense they'll just debase the euro so much that they'll actually harm the euro, probably tragic, to the point where it's not a viable currency. Now the United States is going to do the same thing. I mean, you heard last week Bernanke saying, we're ready to do what it takes and so on, the same type of language that Draghi used over at the European Central Bank. But what they're going to end up doing is the same thing. When they need to do it, they'll print up more money. It's like a counterfeiter saying, only when we run out of money am I going to, if we need to do it, I'll take care of that. So both Europe and the United States are heading down that path of basically solving their problems of too much debt by printing up more currency to pay off the debt. And as we've explained many times, this is going to lead to short-term low interest rates, continued low interest rates, but long-term, this is a disaster for the economy.
Yeah, so,
it doesn't allow the economy to restructure, and you're basically bailing out all the entities that have made the mistakes by taking on too much debt and not managing either their countries' finances properly or their businesses properly.
Sure, and for our listeners out there, this is, in the short term, a financial opportunity for you to be able to take advantage of low interest rates. If, obviously, if you've got a job, if you've got the income to qualify, you've got assets and you're willing and able to buy houses and you're able to get 30-year fixed mortgages on those, in the short term, you have a phenomenal opportunity to take advantage of these rates. And, that's why, there is always, a lot of the times you can find the silver lining. The silver lining is, even though over time they're going to really debase our currency, you're going to have the advantage right now if you choose to buy to take advantage of these low interest rates.
Right, and a debased currency is good for you if you hold a long-term mortgage, because as the years go on and the currency is worth less, you're paying back those dollars that you owe to your mortgage provider and on a debased amount. So basically, you'll be paying less going forward than your current price payments that you're paying now.
Yeah, and to break that down on even just the most simple scale, let's say if you're paying a mortgage, you took one out today at, let's just say, 3.5%, and your mortgage payment was $1,000. You're fixed in for 30 years at that $1,000. Now, over time, as we continue to print money, we're going to debase the currency. So long term, the cost of gas and food and everything else that you buy is going to go up, because we've been debasing the currency. So if you're renting and you don't take advantage of these interest rates and you start, let's just say apples to apples, you have a rent right now, which is $1,000 compared to that same $1,000 mortgage, over a 30-year period, that $1,000 rent could go to $10,000.
Right, and then the nominal amount of your mortgage remains at $1,000, but it could be only worth $800, $700 in current terms,
right,
current values.
Exactly. So, when you're looking at what you're going to do long term with your finances and as far as where you're going to live, where what's going to be your housing situation, I tell people now, just because of, especially in the DC metro area where it's very competitive, rates are rising at a phenomenal rate. And, if even if you're only going to be here potentially for, let's just say, 3 to 5 years, but you can take advantage of the low interest rates. I'm actually at this point advising a lot of my clients that are looking to buy, whether it's their primary residence, an investment property, or second home. I'm advising them to still take a look at buying now, even if they weren't planning on it, because if you're able to take advantage of these low interest rates, you may never see them again in our time. Now, could I be wrong? Sure. Could interest rates get down this low again? Sure. But the likelihood is that they're going to go up, and it's going to be a long time before they come back down to the levels that we're currently at. So I would say that, it's a very sound move that you can make if you're able to, meaning, you've got that stable job, you've got your income figured out. It's not for everybody. I understand that. And, we're seeing a lot of people that, are just saying, well, I can't afford to down payment wise. Well, I have to take a step back on that question as well, because a lot of people don't understand that there's so many programs that are out there for first-time home buyers that don't even really require a down payment. It just requires that your credit hits certain levels, you live in a certain geographical area, and there's income restrictions, which in most areas in the D.C. metro area is still most of the time over $100,000. So there's opportunities loan-wise for people to get into properties. And I think the bottom line is that you just need to be made aware of these opportunities. The way you do that, you can reach out and call me. I can point you in the right direction. I navigate, Virginia Housing Development Authority, all of the different government grant programs. Now, there might be waiting lists for some of these, but you need to start somewhere, and you need to know what all of your options are. I know a lot of people go into, buying their first home blindly, where they kind of use that first point of contact, whether it's the mortgage person they're dealing with or whether it's the real estate person they're dealing with, and they kind of, guide them in the right direction. Well, it's important that you're working with the right agent to start with that kind of has a firm understanding of everything and can point you in the right direction to work with the right mortgage professional. Not everybody gives the soundest advice, and not everybody knows of all the options that are out there. So, while one person might be telling you, oh, you're not going to get a home unless you put a 20% down payment, you don't hold that as the gospel and what you know to be true, because that's not the case. Lewis, I can't tell you how many times I'll have a client that was working with one person come over to me and say, I realized I got to put 5% down. And I said, well, who said so? And, come to find out, a lot of these people actually had VA eligibility and didn't even realize that they had VA eligibility. So it's all a matter of looking at a person's, individual situation, finding out what they have access to money-wise, loan-wise, grant-wise, and then putting them in the right place or at least letting them know what the options are so they can make an informed decision. That's the biggest thing today for me, is to help people make an informed decision. Obviously, most people start with an internet search when they're looking to buy their home, and that's fine. You can get a lot of great information online. However, a lot of it is nationally biased. So you're not going to get the up-to-date, accurate information of where you're at, if you're in, Fairfax, Virginia, or if you're in Montgomery County, Maryland. So it's important that you're working with professionals that understand the different dynamics in these areas, because all real estate is hyper-local, and it's changing daily. Obviously, Lewis, you're out there on the West Coast, and I'm sure you're going to have a completely different dynamic that we have here on the East Coast. So, I think it's important that, you're not working with somebody's brother that referred you to somebody else that kind of part-time in the business, because they might not have a firm grasp on what's going on.
You're always better off with a full-time professional, either a mortgage broker or realtor.
Absolutely. 877-245-2030. 877-245-2030 is the phone number, the off-air phone number. You can call in with any questions, concerns, or real estate needs that you may have. The second part, Lewis, to last week with a big report was the jobs report. Now, why I find the report is really interesting, because they actually said that there were, I believe it was 163,000 new jobs that were added in July, but the unemployment rate went up to 8.254%. Why I find this extremely interesting is because, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in June, 142,415,000 people had jobs in the United States. But in July, the number actually declined to 142,220. So what that actually means is that there were 195,000 fewer Americans that were working in July than in June, but yet there's 163,000 new jobs. Somehow, I'm not sure how this math keeps adding up. They're able to distort the numbers. They've been doing this for an extremely long period of time. It's basically, of course, we're getting closer to the election. I've been saying this for the last 6 months. You'll start to see all these numbers start to come in favor, because they don't want to have a negative light on the election. But the bottom line is that this employment situation is not getting better. And there was an interesting article by Michael Snyder on the economic collapse. And he basically went into in depth on the employment situation and says that the employment rate gives us a much clearer picture of what is actually going on in the economy. And he's using the employment to population ratio as the measure of percentage of working age Americans that actually have jobs. And he says
at an all-time low, I believe.
Yeah, and he says actually when that number's up, it's good, but when it goes down, it's bad. And in July, the employment to population ratio dropped from 58.6% to 58.4%. So that's bad. The percentage of working age Americans that have jobs has now been under 59% for 35 months in a row. Okay? So
that's a much more accurate reflection than the unemployment numbers, because the unemployment numbers, as you mentioned earlier, they take into account people who leave the job market, so they take them they count them as unemployed, but then once they're out of the job market for, 18 months or so, They then put them back in because they're considered no longer unemployed. They're just considered in some black hole. So the unemployment number is very tricky to understand and get a handle on what it really means as to what the employment situation is in the country. And I think this mechanism that you're talking about is much more accurate. How many people as a percentage of the population are employed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it gives a much clearer picture of what's going on. He took it a step further and actually said, he wanted to go back and look when the last recession started, which they've categorized as in 2008. And in 2008, it was basically, 63% of the workforce were actually working, okay? And now we're at 59% when they're supposedly saying that the recession has actually ended. So, and that's 4 years ago.
And also, Ryan, you have to keep in mind, we're not really focused on this right now, but the smaller the percentage of the working age population that's working and that's able to work, and if they're not working, that's going to cut into people paying into Social Security.
Yep.
And that means that the people on Social Security, they obviously aren't working, so a greater percentage of people won't be working and collecting Social Security benefits, and there'll be a smaller amount of people paying in, either because they're unemployed or just because that number is shrinking due to birth rates and demographics. That puts an additional strain on an already probably bankrupt Social Security system.
Absolutely. We're coming up on a break, Lewis. When we come back, we're going to dive more into this employment report and let people know what that means for mortgage interest rates and buying a home in today's market. When we come back, stay right there.